are performing for each other. Okay? So as David gets set for his clinic, I already reminded you about our end of the day together. If you have anything else that you need to do before then, take care of it so that we can have that time together as a concert and clap for each other and play with each other. Trombone players who volunteered to do solos on Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. I'm serious. I'm so proud of y'all. We wanted to feature a whole bunch of younger players, and it's really fun for those of us that have been playing trombone longer than you've been alive to see you get up and go, yeah, I can do this, and feel supported by all those of us that are a little older. So David Marriott Jr. Hails from Seattle. He's one of our local jazz heroes. He plays with all kinds of groups, including the Seattle Repertory Jazz Orchestra, the Emerald City Jazz Orchestra. He's played with a long list of professional artists as a sideman or in groups or together with them. Branford Marsalis, Stuart Dempster, one of our heroes of trombone from Seattle. Who knew Stuart? How many of us? Yeah, it was amazing. He was the trombone teacher at the University of Washington for a long time and played more multiphonics than all the rest of us have together in our lives. Mark Taylor, Jim Knapp, Steve Korn, Seattle's Young Lions, and the saxophonist David Liebman. David and his brother Thomas, who you might have heard of too. Thomas is a trumpet player, multi-instrumentalist. They play together in their group, the Marriott Jazz Quintet, that you can hear all over the Northwest. If you have a chance to hear them, grab them, and hear them play, you're in for a treat. David is a two-time winner of the Earshot Jazz Golden Ear Award, and I'm going off script a little bit. David teaches at Cornish University. No, well, I know Cornish is NOLA, but you've been teaching at Cornish for a long time, right? David, as well as being just an amazing player, and you're going to hear that, has spent his career helping others be better at jazz. He's just an amazing teacher and educator, and one of those musicians who has positioned himself as a mentor for the rest of us about how to be better players, and just has all kinds of things to share. Fun fact about David, I'm trying to give you these as we go along. He was in dozens of commercials before the age of 9. Child actor, done good, now he's a professional trombone player, including a commercial for the Puyallup Fair. I think that one's on YouTube. You could look it up later. Don't do it during his clinic. So I think we're working out tech stuff, and then he'll be with you as soon as we do. But let's welcome David Marriott Jr. to the stage.
That isn't possible. We're going to just try and distribute these to the room.
Some prints right here in front.
Yeah, there we go. Here we go. There's two different things.
Two different things.
One thing that is just sort of the itinerary for what I'm going to talk about today, and a space for you to take notes if you'd like. I think I'm a big fan of note-taking personally. And another thing that you're going to be receiving is a resource for your exploration of the world of the jazz trombone. Let's see if this is happening yet. I'm trying to make it so that we can play some music for you, some recordings for you. Okay, let's get started. The topic of this talk, playing, demonstration, however you like to describe it, I'm describing as difficulties and solutions for the young jazz trombonist. So, to me, how many of you raise your hand if you're a high school trombone student? Raise your hand if you're a junior high trombone student. Okay. And raise your hand if you're a college trombone student. Couple, nice. Raise your hand if you're not any of those things. Yeah! Nice to see all of you here today, too. In my experience of teaching, and as it was described in my intro, I've done a lot of teaching for a lot of years in a variety of capacities. I find that it seems like young trombonists all have sort of the same types of difficulties, okay? And I want to try and hit on a few of them so that at the very least you have some problem-solving skills to move forward by yourself, whether you have a teacher or not, whether you are in a school band program or not, or if you are in all of those things and you just want to get a leg up and get ahead a little bit. I think the first area that I want to talk about is the difference, at least in my mind, between trombone technique and jazz technique. And maybe technique isn't the right word, maybe it's skill set. But I think at the end of the day, these are two different kinds of things in a lot of ways that we have to be responsible for. Just making the trombone go requires a certain amount of physical skills that we have to use to make it go, right? What are the three parts of this body that need to be in prime shape to make a trombone go? Anybody? What parts of this body do I need to make the trombone go? Yeah, I need air, right? I have to do some kind of practicing that is going to deal with my air. We all know what this exercise type is, right? This is long tones for the most part, right? We all know what to do. If we're not doing it, that's on us. What else do we need to use in our bodies to make a trombone go? Besides our brains, thank you. Yeah. So someone said our mouth. Our mouth has two of the things that we need to make the trombone go, right? It has our tongue, and it has this, or lips, our embouchure, whatever you want to call that. So we practice things that help make those things stronger and more flexible and have more stamina and those sorts of things. When it comes to this part of playing the trombone, what do we practice to make our lips work better? Yeah, I heard somebody say it. Flexibility, right? Flexibility kinds of practice. Things that go across the partials of the trombone, right? We've all played exercises like this in some way or form. Whether it's just as simple as two partials or something that's more complicated. That kind of thing, right? This is building this particular thing. It's not really, to a little bit of a degree, it's working on my air, but it's definitely not really using my tongue, right? This is about the lips part. And then there's the tongue. And what kind of exercises do we practice for tonguing? Well, kind of like everything else, right? Everything else we play is going to require us to use our tongue besides long tones and flexibility practice, for the most part. Now, beyond that, that's just making this thing work, right? If we were athletes, this has nothing to do with the sport. This is just making sure that our bodies are in shape and athletic, right? If I'm going to go play football, that requires a whole other set of specific skills and knowledge that I need to acquire. I can't just lift weights at home and go jogging 3 miles a day and go, I'm ready to play football, right? So to me, I need to acquire those skills for the sport that I'm trying to play. The sport that I like to play, we call jazz music. I think the trombonist Julian Priester puts it better. I like to call it spontaneous composition, because that's really what we're doing when we improvise, right? We are spontaneously composing. Now, when it comes to practicing those things, that has to be separate in a lot of ways from the information that you're taking in just to make this thing go. What are some things that you maybe would never practice just to make the trombone go, but you definitely need to practice if you want to play jazz music? Scales, absolutely. You might be able to be a very good trombone player and never actually practice your scales from memory. In fact, I've run into a few over the years, right? They only could read their scales from the piece of paper in front of them. They could do it great and perfect, but you say, play me this from your memory, and it's not there. What else? What other kinds of things would you practice that are specifically jazz related? Styles, absolutely. Right? And we're going to get into how do you deal with style. One of these handouts is all about how do you learn style. Another thing that really, to me, fits into this category, and we're going to play some stuff for you if these terms don't mean anything to you so you can hear what they sound like. I think within the world of jazz, there's some very basic formulas that we all need to be responsible for. It's what's going to allow me to play with them. It's what's going to allow you to play with somebody that you've never played with before. And it's going to allow you to do all of those things without any pieces of paper in front of you. I think the number one piece of advice I can give right out of the gate that's different in a way, different from what we're used to when we're learning trombone in our schools, and that's you have to get away from the page. You have to not be looking at the changes, not be looking at the scales and the arpeggios to truly internalize those things. Now, I'm also a big proponent of finding a way to practice as much as you can with some kind of accompaniment. Now, what's the easiest, cheapest, freest accompaniment that you can practice with? Even simpler than a backing track. A metronome, absolutely. A metronome is all you need. Now, most of us probably practice with it beating on all 4 beats, right? If you would like to get a better sense of how to play in a jazz kind of feel, try to make the metronome just be 2 and 4. 1 click, 2 click, 1 click, right? Like that. So you can really feel the hi-hat of the drums, right? Ultimately, that's what we're going to be getting in the swing feel. You can make the metronome do all kinds of fun things. What if the metronome is the and of 4? Tick, 2, 3, 4, tick, 2, 3, 4, tick, right? You can practice all day with that feeling, and that's going to be completely different than what you're used to feeling. Backing tracks. I am a huge, huge proponent of backing tracks. I do not suggest that if you're working on an idea, let's say you're working on your scales, your major scales, and you're thinking, I'm going to go get that Jamie Aebersold major and minor where it's just B flat major for 3 minutes, and I'm just going to work on my scale back and forth right along with the record. I've never done this before, but I'm ready to go. I think you want to spend some time by yourself before you put in that accompaniment, right? So that you can really, truly hear it for yourself by yourself before saying, and now I'm going to play it in a band. Because that's effectively what you do when you get that backing track out, right? You're kind of giving a performance. At least it feels more like that to me, that I'm leaning towards a way of performing. Now, when it comes to these sort of basic formulas, there's a few, and one of them is a term we've all heard, and it's the blues. This is a big term, a big word. Band, we're going to play the 3 forms of blues that I've got here. Thank you. When I say blues, that word can mean lots of different things, right? It can mean an entire genre of music, from Robert Johnson to B.B. King and everything in between. That is blues music. When I say blues, we could be saying a 12-bar form that we all kind of have a sense of what maybe that means. In the jazz world, at least in the world I live in, of playing jazz music, in my experience, the most traditional, simplest form of a blues is not something we ever play. Even Louis Armstrong didn't play a blues 1-4-1-1-4-4-1-1-5-4-1-1, right? When it comes to a blues, we generally have kind of 3 forms that if we took care of these 3 blueses in all 12 keys, we probably have the vast majority of all jazz music recorded and the vocabulary necessary to play it up until the 1950s, maybe even early 1960s, from a theory standpoint, from a vocabulary standpoint, from a harmonic standpoint. You've got it all covered if you can play these 3 kinds of blues in all 12 keys. So the first blues we're going to play is just a basic, what we think of as major blues. And this is going to sound very typical to anything that we hear in a Count Basie kind of song. It's going to have a 2-5-1 turnaround at the end, and we're going to go to the 6 before we go to the 2. Does that mean, is there anybody in this room that when I say 2 and 5, they don't know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. It's okay if you don't know what I'm talking about, because we're gonna get to that too. So before we talk about the blues, let's talk about that first basic formula, the 2-5, okay? This harmonic motion in the key of C, D minor 7 to G7 to C major is a foundational piece of most music in America from about 1920 something to, again, the 50s, let's say, and particularly with jazz music, that the 2-5 and the 2-5-1 and the 6-2-5-1 and the 3-6-2-5-1 and the things that come out of the cycle of fifths really are foundational to 90% of standards, the things that we think of as the Great American Songbook, and most certainly any jazz tune up through the 1950s. When we get to 1960, things change a little bit. We need some new information to deal with that, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, this version of the blues only has 1 2-5-1 in it, and it's at the very end of the form. So we're going to play the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and back to the 1 chord, just like you would think in a very traditional blues. We'll play 2 bars of the 4 chord, go back to the 1. We'll do the dominant of the 2 chord, and then our 2 to our 5, and then back to our 1. So I'm going to have the rhythm section play 1 chorus of this without me, and then I will play with them for 1 chorus, so that we can just get an idea of what it sounds like harmonically without a solo happening, and then we'll hear it with a solo, okay? Groovy? 1, 2, 1, 2, major blues. Okay, so that's our very most basic, simple kind of blues. Not a lot of 1 chord per measure, nothing complicated going on there. Now, our second form of a blues that we want to deal with is the minor blues. And the minor blues is a little bit different. First of all our chords are minor, as you would expect. And our turnaround, the way we get back to our home key, is a little bit different. Instead of going 2-5-1, we're going to go flat 6, 5, back to 1. Okay? Again, that was in the key of B flat. We're going to stay in the key of B flat so we can hear what these things sound like. Here's B flat minor blues. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is still similar to what we heard the first time. A lot of overlap, a lot of similar devices can be used improvisationally, but definitely different enough And from a harmonic standpoint, well, on the one hand, when we play a major blues, we practice a lot of dominant chords and dominant scales. This is going to take care of all of our Dorian scales and minor kinds of scales. Melodic minor we can use harmonic minor, all of that kind of stuff. Now, the last kind of blues that if we dig into this with all 12 keys, we're going to be set, like 100% set, for pretty much anything that we can have to play up until 1960. And this is what we call a bird blues. And this employs all of the sort of harmonic devices of the bebop era in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and puts it into the context and form of a blues. So we're going to get the form of a blues, and we're going to get the kind of big high points. We're going to start the first phrase on the 1 chord. We're going to start the second phrase on the 4 chord. We're going to have some kind of turnaround to get us back to 1. But we're going to do it with a lot more stuff going on, okay? So when we play it this time, really, you two especially, really plunk out those changes so that we can hear them happening when they change, okay? Because we're going to be hearing, for the first time, 2 changes in a measure, okay? So there's going to be more stuff happening. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We hear a lot more harmonic stuff happening. Now, if we learn bird blues in the key of F, for example, we're ready to play confirmation. First 8 bars are the same as confirmation. If we learn this in the key of D flat, we can play any one of a number of other Charlie Parker tunes. If we learn this in the key of E flat, we can play this in any one of a number of Charlie Parker tunes. This harmonic motion and the stuff required to make it go gives us the keys to the kingdom for most of what we want to, probably most of what we're fans of, right? Now, this brings me to sort of the next area, and that's articulating and dealing with tempos, okay? I think a lot, again, we're back to the concept of problems. I think a lot of young trombone players have a difficulty with swinging at certain tempos. And a lot of that has to do with how to articulate in a jazz style. I think, and I should mention here too, in my intro, I mentioned I studied with Stuart Dempster. Stuart Dempster, fabulous trombone teacher at the University of Washington for many years. Also someone who was involved in, propagating the universe of the didgeridoo to the world back in the 1960s. Someone who championed the alto trombone as a part of a symphony again in the 1960s. We have a lot of things to thank this gentleman for, including a number of the most famous solo trombone pieces of all time were either commissioned or composed by him. I did not have a trombone teacher when I was a lot of your age. I was a young piano student, and my grandfather had a trombone, and I wanted to learn it, and he gave me a few little lessons. But I learned most of how to play the trombone up until the time I got to college by figuring it out. And when I got to college and I had a stellar teacher in Stuart Dempster, I assumed that he was going to straighten me out, that he was going to fix all the things that were wrong with my chops and the way I breathe and whatever, all of those sorts of things. And no, that was not the case. His feeling was, you found a way to make it work. This is your way to make it work. Let's just make you be able to do that better. So when it came to learning how to articulate, it was something that I didn't have somebody teach me. I just had to figure out by how it sounded. Now, I want to talk just for a moment about the other piece of paper in front of you, my list of 76 trombones. If you don't know why 76, please use your Google tool. There could be 100 names on this list. There could be 200 names on this list. This was the, obviously I picked the number for a reason, and had to keep myself to that number. I believe, and this is a list I made about 20 years ago. I updated it last night, and boy, did it make me sad how many people had died in the last few years from this list. But I believe that everyone on this list has made a significant and important and noteworthy contribution to the area of the jazz trombone. And we should know why they're on this list. At the very least, we don't have to own their records. We don't have to, if we call ourselves jazz trombone players, this is a list of people that we should definitely know who they are and have at least an idea of what they sound like, even if it's an approximation. Some of these people you definitely should transcribe. Some of these people you should definitely listen to for hundreds of hours. Some of these people will be your idols for the rest of your life as a trombone player. But at the end of the day, it all comes from listening. It doesn't come from information. And I think that's something that we really get, it's very easy to get caught up on with all of the technology that we have available, with all of the music that you young people have available to you at the drop of a hat. There's not one person on here that you can't go listen to in the next 30 seconds. When those of us that have been playing a little bit longer were your age, I spent 20 years to find a record by someone on this list. 20 years! So you have no excuses for not knowing this from an information standpoint, right? We had excuses. It's out of print. They didn't bring it back. It's all in print. Every rare live bootleg, you name it, you can listen to it. So your ability to be knowledgeable about the way jazz music sounds is at the highest it's ever been for any human beings that have ever listened to jazz music. Think about that for a minute. Not to mention the fact that you also live in a time when jazz education as a thing is at an all-time high. There are hundreds of high-quality publications that you could replace an entire doctoral degree with, no problem. I have mine. I can say that. I could give you a list of 3 books, and it would save you an entire undergraduate education in terms of the information, not in terms of the experience, obviously, but in terms of the information that you would gain in those sorts of situations. So I encourage you to spend as much time as you can listening. I know for me, when I was younger, when I was in junior high and high school and having my first jazz experiences, the things that I was able to bring to the table that weren't being able to play well, because I definitely couldn't, was my knowledge of the music, that it needed to sound this way, that I was trying to emulate Al Gray if I had a plunger solo. Or maybe not Al Gray, maybe Tricky Sam Nanton. If I was supposed to play funky, that maybe I was going to listen to some Fred Wesley. Or if I was playing on a Latin tune, I'd listen to Barry Rogers. Or if it was bebop, any one of a dozen people on this list, right? That if I had something that I had to learn, I had the context to put it against. Now, I'm going to guess that most of you that play in your high school jazz bands aren't playing the professional charts from the Count Basie Band or the Duke Ellington Orchestra or these kinds of things. Maybe some of you are. But that doesn't mean that you can't go find the context for the chart you're playing. Orange Sherbet Swing by who knows who, right? You can go to the website from that publisher, and you can see what the description is. I bet it says something like a Count Basie-like blues, or a Thad Jones style 16-bar swinger. Something, some piece of information that you can then go listen to something to give you context for that chart that you're trying to play. I had a rehearsal today with these gentlemen. One of the tunes I'm going to be playing is Moanin'. not the Mingus Monin, the Bobby Timmons, Art Blakey Monin. And this is a tune that if you've listened to the record, it's one of the most famous records and certainly one of the most famous trumpet solos of all time on that song. There is a certain energy about it, like right out of the get-go. Even though the melody is maybe down here, when we hit that bridge, it gets pretty big. And when the solos start, it is with energy and intent and focus, right? We weren't bringing it as a band. We weren't bringing it with like let's remember what this song is about. Picture in your head what that record sounds like, even if you haven't heard it for 20 years. Just envision it in your head when Lee Morgan starts out and it goes, and it's just kicking along, right? We want to feel, that's how it should feel when we play it, right? I don't need to put the record on. I don't need any other information other than that feeling that I got from when I was your age and I listened to that record. And now that brings something to the music that is so important that you can't put on a piece of paper, that no amount of information on that piece of sheet music is going to convey. Okay, let's switch slightly some gears. I wanted to talk a little bit about clefs. How many of you, as trombone players, only know bass clef? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you know bass clef and treble clef? Raise your hands. How many of you know bass clef and tenor clef? Raise your hands. Yeah, okay. Some overlap, some differences. A few little things. If you are not conversant yet in treble clef and you are trying to be a jazz musician, start. Start now. 9 times out of 10, in small group settings, there will not be trombone parts. There will not be bass clef lead sheets for you. There will be concert parts or B-flat parts in treble clef. So you better be able to deal with one of those two things. Now, the reason I mentioned tenor clef is that tenor clef is a super valuable tool for letting you transpose from a trumpet part to a trombone part. Take that trumpet part, throw a tenor clef on there, Bob's your uncle, you're ready to go. That as a skill in of itself is something that's worth practicing, certainly. But without a doubt, the preponderance of materials for learning how to play jazz, whether we're talking about exercise books or books on pentatonics or transcription books or whatever it is, unless it's trombone specific, which let's face it, there's not a lot of that, it's going to be in treble clef. Even J.J. Johnson's book on jazz etudes for an instrumentalist, there's a treble clef version for a very good reason. So please invest some time in getting your treble clef just slowly starting to go. It will help you immensely when you go to a jam session and there's one guy with a real book and that's the book that you need to read, because it will not be in bass clef most of the time. I'm going to see if we got some internet happening in here yet, because I would love to play something for you. It looks like it. There we go. Okay. Let's see if we can hear this. Can we hear that? You want to figure that out? I want to talk just for a moment, too, about keys and dealing with keys, and what I ultimately wanted to play for you I can also do live, so we'll do that as well. Let's talk about fake books and learning songs for a moment. How many of you know the song or familiar with the song, I'm Getting Sentimental Over You? At least a few, okay? How many of you played I'm Getting Sentimental Over You? What key is it in? Anyone? It's in D, right? If you play the Tommy, if we're talking about the Tommy Dorsey version, right? That's where it ends, right? In your fake book, it's going to be in F, or way, way up, right? So, again, in your fake book, it's going to say play this song in the key of F in a combo situation. Are we good here? I want to, for example, play for you the key Sonny Stitt plays it in. E flat. And here's the Tommy Dorsey version. Another example. Let's do Look to the Sky. I think it's on the music stand. I recently was going through a bunch of classic Jobim bossa novas, and a lot of the original recordings of those tunes feature the great Irby Green on trombone playing lead, a lot of times playing the melodies. One of his tunes is called Look to the Sky. It's a real pretty kind of A-B-A-C form, easy blowing, not a lot of crazy changes. The melody starts on the 7th of the key that we're in, okay? That's just to say that most of the time when you see this tune, if you were to go on the internet and type in Jobim, Look to the Sky, lead sheet, search, you're going to get it in one of two keys. You're going to get it in F, or you're going to get it in E flat. So E flat, F would sound like, that's where the melody would start in F. In E flat. But when we play it in D, the original key, as intended, not the key that you'll probably ever play it with anybody else, but the key that it really should be played in, the key that it was originally recorded in by the composer, it's in this beautiful singing range on the trombone that we wouldn't get if we didn't investigate the key of the original. How many of you played The Girl from Ipanema? At least somebody in here, right? What key is The Girl from Ipanema in? F. That's what everybody says. It's in F. What key is the original recording in? D flat. Dang right. Yeah. Nobody plays it in D flat, and I hate to say it, nobody knows it in D flat. You go on the gig and you say, let's play A Girl from Ipanema in D flat, the whole rhythm section will go, there'll be some squinting and thinking, right? This is Look to the Sky in D. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, sorry, this is bossa nova. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It never is like too ridiculously high. Thank you guys. It's never too ridiculously high, and yet still is in this very singing register of the instrument. For example, Stella by Starlight. Normally, in the key of B flat, we would start. We have to go way down there. That's not what JJ chose to do. Come on. See, we're a fourth up from where we would normally be. So we end up down. Now that's just all of that is to say, if I just go to the fake book and go, that's where I'm playing it, and that's the end of the process, you're cutting yourself off from a lot of really valuable, good sounding choices in terms of what key to use. Now, there's a lot of tunes that don't have that kind of flexibility, right? I went to do Corcovado, another Jobim classic. I'm arranging it for a singer in Seattle for big band. And we were trying to find the key for the singer, and I thought, well, let me go see what keys people do it in. Let's go to the original, let's see what Jobim plays it in, let's check out the Sinatra version, because this is a gentleman singer. Everyone does it in C. Men, women, doesn't matter the register. It's one of those melodies that works no matter which register you're in the original key. So no one really ever plays that song outside of that key. What are some other tunes that maybe nobody plays except for in one key? Like St. Thomas, right? In the Mood, yeah, right, no one's here, definitely not in the mood.
In Birdland, the original was played.
Birdland, definitely. No one's changing keys for to play Birdland. We're playing the original key of the record, that's it. There's no other versions. But I think this comes back to the why we need to spend time listening. Because there's no books. For all the great jazz books and resources out there for how to do what we do, there's nobody saying, listen to more records and pay attention to the keys, because that makes a difference. You won't have as much, say over that if you're playing in a big band. Obviously, we're talking about small group kinds of playing. I want to talk for a moment. I'm here, by the way. I'm here because of Yamaha. I'm a Yamaha artist, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about equipment. I am not somebody who is a flag waver and says you have to buy this. I play this because this is what I've played. I've played Yamaha since I was your age. I got my first Yamaha trombone when I was 15. And it's the way it plays and the sound it makes is the sound that I like. That's what you should find for you at the end of the day. Now, I can speak to the difference between these two things. To me, this is far more important to get figured out than this, right? That the sooner you spend some time understanding what the relationship of your lips to this circle, the sooner all of this will matter less, and you can have more fun with this part of it. I hesitate to say, but I would suspect that there's maybe one or two people in here that don't know the equipment that they play on, that they don't know what their mouthpiece is, and is it a big mouthpiece? Is it a small mouthpiece? Anything about it, shallow, deep, blah, 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 right? Same with your instrument. Do you know the bore size of your instrument? Do you know the bell size of your instrument, right? Do you know some of the basic things that are going to define the sound when you play? Now, for me, I was very lucky. When I was about 20, I was in the throes of trying to find a great mouthpiece for me. I have fairly, as you can see, not the meatiest of meaty chops. So I was playing on like a 7C, but finding it a little bit restricting. So I was leaning towards a 6.5 AL and finding that to just be a little bit too free, and I wanted to find something in the middle, and I was struggling to find a mouthpiece that really fit my chops that was in between those two things. And at the time, trombonist Jiggs Wiggum was developing this mouthpiece and had 8 prototypes at a workshop that I attended that he was at. And we tested these prototypes every morning for a week. And by the end of that week, I knew this was the mouthpiece for the rest of my life. And I've been playing on it ever since. 30 years. I have 20 of these. This to me makes this a lot less important. It doesn't make it unimportant. It just makes it less important. If I don't have this, than, oh, I'm going to really rely on the things that I like and need to get out of this because I brought the wrong mouthpiece, or that the connection between the two isn't really happening. Again, just in my experience and being around, great jazz trombone players over a lot of years, it seems to me that guys with meatier chops play bigger mouthpieces, right? We're talking about Slide Hampton. Slide Hampton played a 1.5 G on a tenor trombone, right? He had really meaty chops. Wycliffe Gordon, real meaty chops, right? J.J. Johnson, not meaty chops, right? Smaller mouthpiece. So, if nothing else, you should be aware of what this thing is and how it relates to your chops. Now, when it comes to the horn, at least when we're talking about, problems that I see, and like Nathan, I've done a lot of judging of high school bands over the years, jazz competitions and festivals and things. I have seen many, many times choices of equipment that are causing a young player to swim upstream with their development. They are trying to play lead on a symphony horn. They're trying to play bass trombone on a tiny, 3B with a trigger, right? These kinds of things. My only advice in terms of equipment is make sure that you're not putting yourself at negative resistance to your goals. If your goal is to play bass trombone, try to start leaning bigger with your equipment, right? It seems silly to say that out loud, but I have seen the opposite. Similarly, if you're a young trombone player and you're playing lead in your jazz band and you're trying to do it on a big horn with a trigger, it's okay. It's okay. Most people don't do that. That's not the commonplace to do that, right? This is commonplace if you're playing first trombone in a jazz band, right? A horn that looks like this. Now that said, I love this instrument. This particular trombone, I feel, is the best trombone I've ever owned and probably ever will own. They do have them. This particular model is a Japanese-only model. Josh from Yamaha does have one here, so if you want to check it out, and it is something you won't try anywhere else. It's a fabulous young trombonist, now not young, trombonist in Japan named Eijiro Nakagawa. This is his artist model. It's very similar to the Wycliffe Gordon model here in the United States, but it's different enough and in ways that I like that, for me, this is it. Right? Like, this is it. I don't ever need to go do this again. And I think in a certain respect, finding that direction that you're trying to go in as a trombonist, regardless of what equipment you currently have, that's the trajectory that you want to start thinking about. I would like to be a jazz trombone player. Well, that probably doesn't mean acquiring a bass trombone, right? Or a Bach 42 even, for that matter. Right? Not that those things are not valuable. I just know they have been not valuable to me, and I own those things. I'm a jazz trombonist. I don't get called to use those things. I don't get called to play in orchestras anymore. Seattle's a great town for music. We've got stellar classical trombone players, Koichiro Yamamoto. Right? I'm not sitting in a section with him. So I have no use for those things. But what I do have use for are jazz trombones. So I have a 525 bore, and I have this horn, and I have a couple other things, and that's about it. But I can't stress enough that if this is the music that's important to you, that you investigate the equipment that the people are using to make it go, right? If we were to look at this list of 76 trombone players and start to list all of their equipment, do you know how many of them would have a trigger? Maybe 5. Maybe. I would be hard-pressed to find 5 names on this list of guys that regularly used a trigger. Just off the top of my head, I know Robin Eubanks for sure. Yeah, it's different. It's different. After that, it's like, well, maybe he did sometimes, or a little bit here and there. Right? But it's not commonplace. And that doesn't mean you can't. I played a 525 trigger horn for 25 years. Stuart can attest to how much effort I had to put into doing that for a long time. It can be done. Elliot Mason plays a larger bore. Ryan Keberly, Steve Charest, these guys all play larger bore trombones. It's 100% doable. But just know that your heroes probably did not do that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how to track your progress when it comes to this thing. The metronome, I think, is one of the most valuable tools that you can have. Now, I flirted a little bit with the idea of dealing with tonguing. Can we play, let's do Polka Dots and Moonbeams. I think it's on the stand. We're just going to do that much. There's more, but we're just going to do that much. I like using the metronome to be able to tell me where I'm getting to in terms of a style, in terms of an articulation, in terms of any kind of proficiency. And I know the thing that, at least for me as a jazz player, separate from me as a trombone player, is thinking changes in time at the tempo that I need to think them at. Or to put myself in a place where I can reduce out that information and think less. For example, we were rehearsing for the slip horn concert, and there's a part of one of the charts that Nathan and I have to play solos in, and there's no changes. And there's just, an 8-bar rest. And so we go get the changes. The changes aren't complicated, but there's definitely not enough room to write in 8 bars of changes in that 8 bars. So I've got to find a way in that moment to just reduce it down and have it be simple, because I only have this much space to write in 8 bars worth of changes. So I wrote the very basic information. I'm starting in C, and then I'm going to do a 2-5, and then I'm going to do a 5 of the 4 chord, and then I'm going to the 4 chord. That's the basic changes. So I wrote C, 2-5, C7, F. That's it. Yeah, there's 2 5s in there. There's all kinds of other motion, but the basic information I'm good with. And I can think that no matter what tempo we're in, whether it's here or 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're gonna play. Let's just play the first 2 bars over and over again. This is something that you can practice with your play-along record when you're listening to a record by somebody that you like, and it's a song that you're trying to learn. So 1, 2, 3, 4. F major, D minor 7, G minor 7, C7. Just those 2 bars. F major 7, D minor 7, G minor 7, C7. Now I could think of that as just F, C7, F, C7. That's the Barry Harris. That's like the 1950s beboppers. That's the way they think of this stuff. Okay, that's great. Now, let's do it at a little brighter tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. F, D minor, G minor, C7. F, D minor, G minor, C7. That's a lot of thinking, right? But what if it's as simple as F, 2, 5, F, 2, 5, F, 2, 5, F. Okay? Great. Now, to me, this is what we need to practice. We need to practice getting our brain to go as fast as the music. Now, we want to do that with the horn at the same time, but it doesn't really help us to try to go right to the horn if we can't do it in our heads without the horn. 99% of the time, we are taught, go from step A to in the horn with your hand and trying to play ideas and think the right key and do all of these things. To me, we have to separate these things out and say, wait a minute, I can train my brain all these ways and never have this thing in my hand. Because, to quote J.J. Johnson, this is a horrible, beastly instrument, right? It's dumb. It's dumb. And yet, in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, it's not. It's just as artful and beautiful, if not more so, than a lot of other instruments, to me. And that's why I play it. Again, I told you earlier, I started as a piano player. I very much thought my life in music was going to be as a piano player. I think for me, the realization was I was just a good piano player. And while I was maybe not as good as a trombone player, I definitely was a little more special as a trombone player. And I think that that's the thing that we're trying to find, right? We're trying to find the place in the music that makes us feel special. Whether we are or we aren't doesn't really matter, right? It's how we feel. I have a great friend and mentor in Seattle, Rick Mandyke, who reminds me constantly, there's one number one reason that those of us that have made the choice to be, full-time musicians, there's one reason that we've chosen to do it above all others. Because it's fun. Because it is the most awesome thing to get to do to make a living doing. Playing music, talking about music like I'm doing now. The best, absolutely the most best and satisfying in all of the things. Not to mention the stories, and every single person who's had a career in music has hundreds and hundreds of stories that cannot be duplicated. Now that said, to me, the best thing you can do, whether you're young, old, been at this for 2 minutes, or at it for 20 years, if you haven't spent time with somebody who is better than you, more knowledgeable than you, been around longer than you, played with more people than you, this is how we learn the music. This is how Charlie Parker learned the music. Dizzy Gillespie, J.J. Johnson, Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins. We can go on and I can keep naming famous jazz musicians. But they did not learn the way you're learning. And yet the way they learned, maybe in the words of Kincaid in the James Bond movie, sometimes the old ways are the best. That sitting there with a record, an actual record, and putting the needle down, and holding that jacket in your hand and reading about the people that you're listening to while you're listening to it. Maybe that is better than just pressing a button in your Spotify and not knowing anything about the music that you're listening to other than the name of the person that it was recorded under. You're going to have a hard time convincing me. I'm just saying. Another fabulous quote from the great Clark Terry. Imitate, assimilate, innovate. This is a very great three-step process. Most people don't ever get to the third part. Most of us get stuck for the rest of our lives in that middle section where we're just trying to sound like we belong on the same stage as those greats. As if J.J. Johnson was here, that I would sound like I belong up here with him and not some pale comparison, right? That is, to me, what I'm trying to do. And if along the way I'm able to add a little something special, something that's me and me personally, then so much the better. I will leave you with one more quote before I address a few other little things. I'm now in my 50s. For most of my career, I was the young guy in the band, on the bandstand, all that kind of stuff. I'm not that guy anymore. And with that has come a lot of reflection and trying to codify my own ideas and the things that I've learned about music and being a musician. I've been a musician since I had my first professional gigs in Seattle in blues bands when I was 19. Most, if not all of my adult life has been spent doing this. And I think the thing that, one of the lines that I have used more often than not to try to convey what I hope all of you go out there into the world to try to do is this statement. And the statement goes like this. Good musicians say, I like this, or I don't like this. Great musicians say, I like this because. or I don't like this because. If you haven't spent the time to think about the because of the why you like the music that you like, or who you like, or any of those kinds of things, it is time to start. Because it doesn't help me if you say, I like Charlie Parker. That doesn't tell me anything about you. But if you tell me I like Charlie Parker because of his energy and his bright spirit that shines through the way he plays melodies, and that, right, we're on the same page. We're getting married. We're like, whatever. Like, we are bosom buddies now. I'm right with you with that statement, right? It is the thing that helps you become more individual as an artist and an improviser. That thing that you say, you know what, I really like Conrad Herwig's articulation, but I'm more of a fan of Slide Hampton's harmony, right? It's not just, I like Slide Hampton. Yeah, you should like Slide Hampton. You're a jazz trombone player, right? But why? What is it about him that you like? And hey, it doesn't mean you're supposed to like, you have to like it. I'm all for people not liking Charlie Parker or Louis Armstrong or whatever, but tell me why, for crying out loud. Oh, I don't like Louis Armstrong, it's old. Really? That's your only reason for not listening to Louis Armstrong? Or whatever your other excuse is for discounting something, right? That's not enough of a reason. The because means everything. And as you develop as an improviser, as you listen to the many people on this list and you transcribe them, that you go, you know what, the thing about, let's just pick a name, Glenn Ferris. There's a fun name. The thing I like about Glenn Ferris is he's not a bebopper. He's not like an out there Roswell Rudd type guy. He rides right in the middle of that fence. He's a very unique trombone player. There's a few other people on this list that kind of fit into that category. They're not straight ahead insiders. They're not the far, avant-garde, but they kind of can dabble on both sides of that. And their voice is very unique because of that. That, to me, is the thing that we're trying to get to, both with the music that we listen to and take in, and that helps form us as musicians, but also about ourselves. I liked my solo on that tune because I did this thing here, or because I played this idea, or because there was a theme that was engaged through the whole solo, or because I was able to show off my chops. Whatever the thing is, it doesn't matter. But the because is what it's all about. I also want to stress, I mentioned earlier, I just updated this list only sadly with death dates, and the number of important, significant jazz trombonists to the history of this music that have died in the last 5 years is a real bummer. There are not a lot of people on this list that are alive anymore, folks, and you owe it to yourselves. If you are someone that cares about the jazz trombone, whether you play it or not, but if you're someone that cares about the jazz trombone, you need to seek out these people and go see them when they're in town, when they're playing a jazz alley, or they're playing at a club, or they're doing a clinic at a high school, or if they're like Julian Priester and they're 90 years old and they can still barely play, but they're hanging out every week to tell you stories in public for free, and you're not going to that, you are missing out, period. You cannot get the information from the horse's mouth from many people anymore. I'm very lucky. I can go down this list, and I've had personal experiences with a lot of people on this list, studied with people on this list, toured with people on this list. I am so thankful for that. And yet, at the same time, every time I look at a name on this list that I will never get to see, never got to see because they were passed before my time, is such a bummer. Like, there are many trombone players that I wish I could have gotten to hear live. I'm so I got to hear Bill Watrous and J.J. Johnson, and the list goes on and on of famous trombone players that I got to hear and shake their hand and sometimes get a lesson from and sometimes get to play with and sometimes sit in the section with. You all have these opportunities here in the Northwest. At the very least with Julian Priester, who is still alive, is still playing. I'm playing a concert with him in 2 weeks, and he is going to be playing, believe it or not. Talk about learning a lesson every time he plays. Again, he can barely play the horn, and yet every idea is magic. Absolute magic. It's like hanging on someone's every word, and they only say one word every 8 seconds. And yet, it's the perfect one word every time they open their mouth. I don't play like that. I wish I could say I played like that. But the lesson I'm still learning from someone like Julian Priester, who has played with everybody from the Duke Ellington Orchestra to you name it, I mean, everybody that's significant in this music. It is a resource that we just cannot overlook. And thankfully, there are some up-and-coming younger trombone players that are still around and still touring and still do come through this town on a fairly regular basis. We have to support them, because if we don't support them, then we don't have a job at some point in time. A jazz trombone player will be a dying breed. We will be extinct. It's up to us and it's up to you to keep that happening. Okay. Before we get out of here, I'm going to hand this off to Nathan. Nathan's going to be doing another clinic about a lot of different things. Does anybody have any questions for me before I get out of here? I know I talked about a lot of stuff. Yeah, please.
So one of the hardest things, especially in the Northwest, is finding a place where you can try mouthpieces out.
Yes.
Here in the big cities like
Yes.
New York or Los Angeles, but especially around here, and I didn't even have a chance to go in there and look and see what they've got for mouthpieces. When you decided you were going to try the Jig Zwigum, somebody told you, or maybe a teacher told you.
Yeah.
I guess what kind of information can you give these people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot that you can. So first of all, let's talk very briefly about mouthpieces. There's kind of 2 or 3 kind of big numbering systems. The Bach numbering system is one. The Schilke numbering system is another. And kind of there's another sort of system Dennis Wick uses and some other people use. But I think you're being able to put your mouthpiece into the context of one of those systems, one of those numbering systems, and understanding how those numbers work is a good first step. You can do all that without being able to go to a shop. You can go to the mouthpiece websites, look at the specifications, look up the specification of your mouthpiece, see what it is, see how it compares to the list of mouthpieces that they have available. And, oh, this one is a little tiny bit smaller. This one's a little bit tiny bit bigger. This is the same one in size across, but it's a little bit deeper or a little bit more shallow. You can do a lot of research from the math of knowing what your mouthpiece is, and then maybe talking to your teacher and saying, I'm having these difficulties. I think I need a mouthpiece that does this, that's either more open or tighter or blah, 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 all those sorts of things. And now you have at least a direction to go in, okay? So that would be step 1. And that's where I started. I knew 6.5 was too much one way, 7C was too much the other way. I needed something in that gray area. So there's a whole bunch of Schilkes. 46 and 47, I think, are in the middle of that. There's a Bach 6 3/4. I found out that the Bach megatones have a different bore at the bottom than the regular mid. So I thought, oh, maybe the 7C megatone. Like I was very methodical about kind of crossing things off lists in terms of what could it do for me that I wanted, right? Now, then it comes to at some point you got to order some stuff, right? At some point you're like, I got to get a Schilke 47 and a 48 and a 46B and a 46C, and I got to try all those out. Certainly, at least in my experience, Ted Brown has always been the best place to do that because at least they can get the stuff for you. I used to use a company called Mouthpiece Express. I don't even know if they're out there anymore, but mouthpieceexpress.com used to do all of that stuff thank you. Yep. Yeah, I got a clock. Thank you. They used to have a thing where they would send you you had 3 weeks or whatever. So that was that time for me. That's how I did it. I would get one, or two at a time maybe, and try it out. Again, back to your friend base, people. If you're in the mouthpiece hunt, I bet your band director's got a drawer of mouthpieces, right? I'm sure that your friends have mouthpieces. Compare. Get some alcohol spray and keep those things clean so you don't get each other sick. But try them out and see what the difference is. If you have never played any other mouthpiece than the mouthpiece that came in the case with your horn, you are definitely missing out on some great possibilities for yourself. But you do have to do a little bit, I think, of research. I think you have to understand what you're already playing. There has to be some context for where you're at currently, and then where am I trying to get to? That as long as you have a sense of that, now I can read those mouthpiece descriptions, and honestly, Bach's mouthpiece guide, just from an understanding of how mouthpieces work, is super valuable. Again, you don't have to buy this. This is all free on their websites. Every mouthpiece company has all this sort of stuff on their websites. But I think getting together with somebody and because again, we hear it from here, and having someone hear it from here is also really valuable. Maybe record yourself with that mouthpiece and being able to A/B it so that you really hear you can listen to the difference without having to play at the same time. Really evaluate. Oh, what's happening? Well, I'm losing a little bit of my flexibility, but I'm gaining brightness, or whatever those things are. I know for me, when I went to using this mouthpiece with a bigger horn, it didn't cut. I couldn't make it cut. So I had to find something like this that was close, but a little brighter and a little more punch for like a pop gig. And I found one. I found believe it or not, the Giardinelli, the Giardinelli Mick Gillette from Tower of Power trombone mouthpiece. Is the same specs as this mouthpiece. It's just a little fatter rim and a little smaller throat. So it just pops. So it feels the same on my face for the most part, but it definitely sounds brighter and more stringent. And when I'm playing, Uptown Funk and stuff like that, I want that. This is what I hear for myself. A warmer, more J.J. Curtis-esque kind of sound. And so this is what I use most of the time. But yeah, absolutely. It is tricky to do this. We used to have a lot of good music shops. There used to be a Custom Brass over in Bellevue, and there were really good brass shops here in the Northwest, and it's harder now. Definitely harder. Any other questions I can answer before I go? Yeah. Where do you find cool jazz trombone ensemble music, right? Well, you're talking to somebody who has some of those charts, so let's talk later. I bought them in a cutout bin at a music shop years ago. The charts are hard to find, and especially those cool ones, like they're out of print. I have spent many hundreds of dollars on eBay over the decades to buy out-of-print sheet music. It's something I care about. I care about trying to make sure that it exists at least for another generation. That's the name of the game. I think number one, a lot of colleges and those sorts of programs have those sorts of things. So if you are a college student and you have lending library access, use worldcat.org. You can borrow those arrangements from another college and copy them, and now you got them and you're ready to go. I think finding people that play in ensembles like that have, talk to the gentleman that runs the slip horn group, and finding those kinds of people, and certainly teachers. Someone who's older is going to have old sheet music. Probably isn't going to be one of your peers. My hope is that someday all of those charts are easily available for everybody. I got to play those. I played all of those, the J and K octet charts. At one point they were in print, and a lot of people had them. Now people don't. They're gone. People die, and their families just throw out all the sheet music because it's just paper. And now somebody who had something really valuable to our universe is gone. So it's, again, back to, it's up to us. We gotta find these things and help preserve them. And so that is something, that's a big thing for me. I have, you know, hundreds of 1940s bebop era sheet music, instrumental choruses by Ray Brown and Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker that were published in the 40s that are long and long out of print. Anything else? I know I gotta let Nathan get up here, so I will be around. Find me. My information is on the bottom of the sheet. My email's on there. Email me. I'm pretty bad at it, but I'll get to it eventually. I do have a website. There's lots of stuff on my website, lots of articles that I've written about the things that we're talking about that you can download for free. Again, I just encourage you, reach out and find me. I'm a musician here in the Northwest. I'm from here. I came back here because I love it here, and I want to be a resource to the people here. So use me as that. Thank you, Yamaha. Thank you, Symposium folks.
David Marriott Jr., the one and only.
Thank you.
I want to remind you that David is a Yamaha performing artist.
For when I had you, it was very valuable.
Am I on? There we go. I want to remind you that David is a Yamaha performing artist, and his appearance today is sponsored by our friends at Yamaha and Ted Brown Music. Thank them when you see them. Let's take a break. Ready, go. Go stretch. Take a lap around the building. We'll see you in a few minutes for Nathan.